Operation Pluto, the failed Bay of Pigs invasion. On March 17, 1960, President Eisenhower approved Operation Pluto, a meticulously organized project by the CIA in close collaboration with the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States Armed Forces. The objective was clear and ambitious: to recruit, train, and equip an army of Cuban exiles to overthrow Fidel Castro's revolutionary government. Military preparations were concentrated in Guatemala, where Base Trax was established under the command of U.S. Colonel Frank J. Egan. The command structure included several Cubans in key positions: Oscar Carroll, former lieutenant of the Cuban Constitutional Army chief instructor; José Andrew, executive assistant; Manuel Blanco Navarro, head of military intelligence; Ramón Ferrer-Mina, head of supplies; José Pérez San Roman, head of operations. The CIA prioritized recruiting former military personnel with clean service records, although some had ties to the Batista regime, which could generate rejection among the troops. Initially, the operation contemplated training based on guerrilla tactics. However, on November 4, 1960, Washington ordered a drastic change: the preparation of a conventional force for an amphibious and airborne assault. The first version, called Operation Trinidad, consisted of a combined landing by sea and air near the city of Trinidad, with the objective of establishing a beachhead, seizing the local airport, and forming a provisional government that would request international recognition and subsequent military support. This strategic change was made by the CIA without formal approval from either the outgoing or incoming administration. Although Cuban intelligence services captured part of this information, they could not determine whether it was disinformation or the real plan. For this reason, Cuban defenses maintained their priority in Trinidad and sent only limited forces to the Bay of Pigs. Subsequently, Trinidad was discarded as a landing point, but the fundamental strategy remained: a single, forceful blow through an air and sea landing to establish a beachhead. Operation Pluto was designed to succeed without explicit massive American support. The plan was inspired by two of the most complex amphibious operations in recent military history: the assault on Iwo Jima during World War II, and the landing at Incheon during the Korean War. To direct this complex operation, Colonel Jack Hawkins of the U.S. Marine Corps was appointed, who was introduced to the recruits under the pseudonym Frank. At the base, the men were reorganized into conventional units, squads, companies, and battalions. Enthusiasm grew among the recruits, convinced they could conquer and maintain a beachhead long enough to receive American reinforcements. Some even acquired cameras to document their anticipated victory, and each battalion incorporated a war correspondent with filming equipment. The nerve center of the operation was established in a Pentagon building in Washington, known as Quarter Eyes. On the first floor was the War Room, a high-security area equipped with its own teletype system and large maps of Cuba, with special emphasis on the Zapata Swamp. From there, the movement of the fleet was controlled and contact was maintained with the invading Air Force. On the second floor operated the propaganda section, directed by David Atlee Phillips, responsible for preparing messages for Radio Swan and press releases apparently issued by the Cuban Revolutionary Council, CRC. Phillips had drafts prepared for each anticipated phase of the operation. From the beginning of the invasion to international recognition of the new government, and the dispatch of U.S. troops. The headquarters was directed by prominent CIA figures and U.S. military personnel, including Richard Bissell, the brain behind the operation, General Charles P. Cabell, CIA Deputy Director, Howard Hunt, and other CIA, Army, Navy, and Air Force officers. After 13 months of preparations, on April 17, 1961, Brigade 2506 finally invaded Cuba at Playa Girón and Playa Larga. The CIA expected Castro to hesitate before mobilizing his best forces to defend the capital, anticipating possible additional landings. For this reason, the invading forces were positioned mainly to the northwest and east of Playa Girón, preparing to face Cuban troops coming from Santa Clara and Cienfuegos. However, the strategy failed. In the early morning of April 17, upon receiving reports of the landing, Fidel Castro correctly concluded that this was the main attack and immediately ordered the mobilization of all his available forces to face the invaders. During this period, there were some minor uprisings of counter-revolutionary groups inside the island, but most adopted a wait-and-see attitude, pending the development of events. After the defeat of the invaders, many of the insurgents returned to their homes. Brigade 2500's mission was apparently simple. Occupy a beachhead and maintain it for 72 hours until reinforcements arrived. However, they failed to resist the rapid and overwhelming response of Cuban revolutionary forces, which defeated the invaders in less than 3 days, marking one of the greatest failures in the history of U.S. covert operations.